When it comes to real estate and buying or selling a home, one of the questions that I'm asked all the time is, do I need to pay and have a survey done on the home I'm buying or the home I'm selling? And it really depends. The answer depends on, are you a buyer or a seller in the transaction? And if you're a buyer, it also depends if you're getting financing, if you're getting a loan. So I'll begin with the buyer side, and I think this will be very helpful. As a buyer, you are not required to get an actual full survey on a property that you're buying. In most cases, if there's a survey required, an actual full survey, it would be the seller's responsibility. What you would be required, though, and it's usually a condition of your financing and also a condition of your title policy, is something called a location survey. And what a location survey is a print drawing that shows the relationship of your property boundaries or your property lot line with the relationship of your home or your structure, maybe your driveway or maybe utility easements, things like that, or building setbacks. And I'll show you an example. This is an example of a location survey. You can see the lot line. Here's the street, and then the side lot line, the back lot, and side lot line, and it shows utility easements, drain easements, and so this is usually a requirement, not of the transaction itself, but by your lender to have a location survey done. They're not expensive. A location survey will run in my market under $200 to have a location survey done. But there's a lot of benefits for you having a location survey. Number one, it gives you the exact dimensions of your lot. Now, a tip, if you want to know exactly where your lot lines are at the time that the title company orders your location survey, you can, for a small fee, you can have them actually flag each of the corners on your property. And if the surveyor's already going to be at the property, it's a whole lot easier for them to do it then than having you have them come back at a later time to flag the lot corners after they've already been there to create the location survey. So things that the location survey usually finds, which is very helpful, is they're looking specifically for encroachment. And an encroachment would be if the neighbor's yard, barn, or shed is built over the property lot line from the neighbor's property and it's now over partially on your lot. The location survey will certainly show that. If a neighbor's fence was built over the lot line and on your property, which is something you would want to know as a buyer if the neighbor keeps coming over onto your property, innocently thinking they own that property. And so that would show that. Same thing with driveways. There's cases where when the driveway is put on the property, it's over on the neighbor's property by 6 inches or a foot. And you want to know that. And the lender likes to know that. The person doing your loan wants to know if there's any issues. And then also something that you learn on a location survey is the house built in the utility easement? The utility on your lot lines usually has a certain number of feet from that lot line in for them to access and service their utility lines. And the example would be like the power lines, a gas line, maybe water sewer line would be examples. Phone, if there's landline, would be an example for the utility easement. So if the house is built in that easement, sometimes that can be an issue. So that kind of covers the buyer side, but normally as a buyer purchasing a home, you do not have to pay to have the property entirely surveyed where they do a full PIN survey, meets and bounds. That's usually not the buyer's expense. In the meets and bounds full survey, that's where it gets more expensive. The location surveys are very affordable and they solve the majority of the challenges that you may be faced with. Now, as a seller, I'm going to give you two answers. Probably in my experience, 90% of the homeowners selling their property do not have to pay for a full survey. If your property is located in a housing subdivision where the parcels are platted lots, that survey has already been done and is of public record. So normally you do not have to do a new survey on your property when you go to sell it. Now, if you've got acreage, or you've got a parcel that's an older survey, it may need it. And I'll give you an example. In Knox County, one of the things that's a dead giveaway, when we do our research before we list a house, we're looking at the deed and we're reading the deed over. And there's normally a stamp on the deed called conditional approval. And that means that when the property was deeded to the current owner, it was deeded for that transfer only. And then any future transfer, like a conveyance or a sale, it would require a new full survey. And so that's that. If you've got a conditional approval on your deed, you're going to need to get a new survey on the property. Now, why is this important? Well, two things. One, there's a fee associated with getting a full survey, and that fee is based on how big your lot is and what, if it's just a typical square or rectangle, it's not as bad. And then it depends on how big it is. And if you're dealing with trees and things like that, the price can adjust. But the bigger issue, more than the cost, is the time. The best surveyors are always busy and they're always booked out. So what you don't want to do as a seller is list your property. The agent doesn't know that it needs a survey, and you find out at the last minute there's a problem with the legal description and it's not going to pass. And now you're supposed to close on this house in 3 weeks, and you find out in 3 weeks the surveyor can't get to you for 6 weeks, and now you've got a bottleneck in your real estate transactions. So those are examples of when you would need a survey. And I'll give you another example of when a seller might want to do a new survey. If you've got a large parcel of ground and you are wanting to sell the home that you built 15 years ago, but you want to keep the majority of the land. So you're going to carve out a piece of the property that you've got. You're going to sell the house and the land it sits on. And if it's got well and septic, of course, you want to make sure that it encompasses that well and septic. And so you'll need to get a new survey to carve out that piece so that you'll know, like if you're trying to sell it with 2 acres, and you're going to want to take 2 acres out of the original survey. And that would be another reason that you would want to get a new survey on the property. So these are just a few examples, and the examples I'm giving you are specific to my experience here in Central Ohio and Knox County. But I would believe that most of these examples will apply pretty much anywhere. So I'm Sam Miller, Remax Stars Realty. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. And I'll come back to you next week with another episode of 2 Minutes on Tuesday. Have a good one. Bye.